Hi, I want to show you some very important basic settings in Interact. You can find them here on the General tab under Settings. And as you can see, Interact comes in various languages. So whenever you want to switch the user interface to a different language that you want to have. I want to stay with English here and show you a very important other function. This is the backup. Interact is automatically making backup copies of your work if this setting is activated. Whenever your computer crashes and you restart it and you restart Interact, then Interact will automatically recover all the files that were made during the last backup interval. That means you will never lose data. That's a very, very nice function here. Another setting that I want to show you is the formats. On the Formats tab, you see we have the document time format. That's why I already have opened a document in the background. And when I change those settings here, you see that in the background also the time information is displayed differently. I personally like the real time code, which shows the video images at the end. That means I exactly see what video image I'm currently coding. Some might prefer the milliseconds. The only thing you need to be aware of that the milliseconds are divided by a dot versus the video images are divided by a colon. And this is how you can see what time information is currently set. Another very interesting thing is that you can also show the date. I pick the show date is 0. That's why we see the 0 dates here. They're all 0 because our time values are lower than 24 hours. If you work with time that is going over the 24 hours period, then you would automatically see some date information. You can also switch this to days. Then if this time goes over 24 hours, you would see, for example, a 1 and time of the next day. The next thing I want to show you is the number formats and the statistical time formats. Let's switch to some analysis first. Let me show some statistics. That's our full coding system and all our data in this document. This is the statistical output. Let's go to the percentage, for example. Switch that. Here we see we have 2 digits. If you want to have more in our output, then we just increase the floating point position. This is just for output. Internally, Interact always calculates with the highest precision possible. But if you want to copy this data to SPSS or R or Excel or any other program, if you want to save it to a CSV file or export it, you might want to change the setting of the numbers because your target program may, for example, require that you have 2 digits or 3 digits or something like that. That's the same for the time. Here we have the total duration of this specific data set. If I want to change the time format, then I can change it as before. The difference is that the time format for the statistics is independent of the time format for the document, because here you might want to set a specific format that your export needs, whilst in the document you want to work with a more readable time information. If we take a look at the latency calculation, then we see that we have a null value here. Null means person 1 gesture point code was never given in this first data set here. That's this data set here. And that means we have no latency at all because, as I said, the code was never given. That's something different than a 0, because 0 means that person 1 gesture request, for example, was the first code that started at point 0 for this specific data set here. Maybe your target program where you want to export this data to requires a different null value. You can select this here and say, for example, -1 or -99 or whatever null value you want to have. I very much like unticking the show 0 values. That makes my data more readable again. Especially with the colorization, I immediately see what's the peak in this specific code, for example, across all my data sets. That's the red one. If you have a lot of data and you turn off colorization and you also show the zero values, then you see that it's hard to read what's happening in the data. Again, if I turn on the colors and remove the zeros, it's much easier to understand. However, if you export this data, for example, you just copy the data and paste it into Excel, then you would also get empty cells here, and maybe you need the zero and the null values. That's why you can choose if you want to see those values, yes or no, in your export. This was about the most interesting general settings. If you think there is some else that you want to tweak or some else settings that you need to make for other analysis, then you might want to have a look at the behavior tab in the settings, and you see that there are some more for other statistical analyses. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in any of the other videos. Bye bye.